ways to build your life no matter what's in your past? Now, I'm kind of obsessed with this question. For many of us, we have gone through those really grim, rock bottom moments, and we hear the stories of success and people doing well off the back of some of these things, but rarely do we hear what are the fundamental tiny steps, the messy middle as I call it, that you can take in order to move your life forward. And there's so much advice out there that it can feel a little bit confusing. Now, this is deeply personal for me because I've been through many rock bottom moments. I know that it should be just one rock bottom, but often there's like a below and a below and a below. I've been through a few, but we're all different and we've all been through different types of things. So the 8 principles are really applicable to every one of us, no matter what's in our past. So here goes, and I'll talk you through a little bit of my story and how these have specifically helped me, as well as the hundreds of clients and teams that I've worked with over the years. Number 1, get honest with yourself. This seems really simple, but we are actually ninja masters at denial and deceiving ourselves in order to, I guess, stay safe and to avoid doing the tough work that often comes with changing our trajectory, our thoughts, actions, our beliefs, and moving our lives forward. So getting really honest can be tough. Now, I learned this through recovery groups. I was born and raised in a religious cult, arguably a very toxic environment, and, dealt with many traumas along the way, and once I left, descended into alcohol addiction. And it was when I first went into recovery groups about 16, 17 years ago that I learned how to be honest, because I watched people doing it and I was like, oh, is there a way that you can actually say the things that you mean, right? And this got me thinking about my part, my responsibility in some of the stuff that had happened to me. Now, I had a really firm story or belief system, that was kind of a victim mindset, you might call it, right? So kind of putting myself in this position where this was done to me, these people did this, and therefore I am drinking, I'm miserable, I'm depressed, and all the things. But getting honest with myself was like, all right, some of that stuff might be true, but I am now creating those similar conditions for my own kids and part of the problem. So at what point is it their fault, and at what point is it mine? Getting radically honest helped me answer that question. So if it is my fault, if it is on me, what are the things that are in my control that can help move me forward? So principle number 1 that can be applied at any stage, no matter where you're at, is getting honest with yourself. Number 2 is taking radical responsibility. I mentioned accountability, so I don't even think it's about forgiveness or letting go of some of the things that have happened. Everyone's on their own journey, their own timeline with that. And whatever your process is, hey, I am absolutely good with. I'm here to talk about moving your life forward, no matter what's in your past. So that second point is radical responsibility. So it's this thing about from this day forward, I am responsible for myself. From this day forward, I am responsible for the ripple effect or the impact of my thoughts, behaviors, and actions. And when you think about that, it's really tough at first because I had to realize that my addictions had affected my kids and my traumas had affected my friendships and partnerships and people around me. And so it wasn't again about letting go of stuff, but it was going, okay, if no one's coming to save me, if this bit is on me, what are the things I can do? What is possible? Now, back then, the things that were possible were tiny. They were about going to bed sober or reacting in a better way than I had before, or practicing gratitude. It was tiny things that just would happen in that minute, that hour, that day. And of course, now radical responsibility is completely different as I own a business and my kids are big and the stakes are absolutely different, but the principle still applies. So radical responsibility, what is the responsibility you can take for this minute, this hour, this day? And it doesn't feel like change at all at first. It feels like you're just doing stuff and there's no real impact. Just like going to the gym. I've been going for 6 weeks and I'm like, where is my six pack, right? But it just doesn't happen that way. It's that consistency over time that compounds, and over time you look back and you're like, holy shit, I have a radically different life. Number 3, and you might question why this is number 3, but I'm sticking with it, I'm standing by it because it's my experience and what I've seen work for other people. So number 3 is giving back or volunteering. Again, it might feel like I'm skipping a few steps and you might think, hey, don't I need to be healed first? Don't I need to be good and well in order to give back and volunteer? volunteer? Well, in my experience, actually putting yourself out there to work with other people or be there for others does a few magical things. One is, it gives you a break from your head. You know, the brain that is overthinking and doing all of this work just trying to survive, it makes you kind of just have a break from that because you're in the midst of doing something that's out of your comfort zone and is there for other people. Second, it gives you perspective. Perspective is a beautiful thing because you realize, oh, maybe I'm not the only person in the world that is struggling. Maybe I'm not that special. And I say that with love and kindness. When we're kind of in spirals of anxiety and depression or addiction, we sort of think we are the center of the universe and everything is about us. So volunteering or giving back to your community or those around you, even those in your household, can just give you that little sense check to be like, okay, there are other people in the universe and there are other people who have stories too. They might be better or worse or different than mine, but they also have stories. It's part of the human experience that we go through stuff and then we figure out how to bounce back or soldier through whatever that looks like for you. So number 3 is finding a way to give back. Now for me, very early on in my journey, I went to a youth center and in the heart of South London and started volunteering with teenagers and kids who were underprivileged. And hey, they were quite well funded. They didn't really need me. I'm not sure I was a massive asset, but it was simply the act of getting up, going there, talking to the other volunteers, talking to the other young people, joining in a few games or whatever for 2 hours a week. And it just began that momentum to help me think differently, perspective, and a break from my brain. Number 4, now this is important. Begin to tell yourself a different story about your past. This is really difficult at the beginning and it evolves over time. So don't worry if it's tricky right at the beginning, right when you're in that rock bottom point. But I discovered that for many of us, we get very attached to one narrative about our past, one narrative about what we've been through. And hey, we might even be watching all the self-help stuff out there about trauma and the impact. And it's great to learn about this stuff, but it can reinforce this loop that we are a traumatized, broken, or sick person that needs to be fixed or find healing or all the things, right? But when we begin to tell ourselves a different story, we begin to think, oh, I actually can believe something different about my past, and that can shape how I view my future and how I move on from here. At the beginning, it might just be playing what I call the what if game. So what if my past was preparing me for something? What if my past allowed me to learn compassion? What if my past was helping me put in the reps so I could support other people or do this tougher thing or whatever it might be? It kind of doesn't matter, but it's just about playing with 10, 20, 15 different variables about what that past could mean. Now, humans are meaning-making machines, and those people who have bounced back or come to what they call post-traumatic growth, no matter what you've been through in the past, are people who create a different story and then navigate new meaning about that story. So no matter what you've been through, you can begin to curate a different story. Now again, at the beginning, it was impossible not to be like, well, I was raised in a cult, I didn't go to school as a kid, I'm traumatized, now I've got kids, so it's really impossible to do anything for myself, blah, 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 blah. All the things, right? And so now my story is completely different. My past has helped me, given me an edge on the work that I do in many cultures and with many teams and all the things. It allows me self-awareness, compassion, the ability to give back to my kids and the people in the work that I do in a radically different way than I would have had I not been through some challenges. Now remember, this isn't about going, oh yay, I'm so happy this stuff happened to me, right? It's not that. It's actually just taking control of the narrative and slowly, with the what if game, and then putting in some of the other principles into practice, we can go, oh, we can begin to believe that a different story might be true. And once we believe that, then we can begin to create a different story for our future based on this new meaning that we've created from our experiences. Number 5, if you've watched my content before, you will be deeply familiar with this concept because I talk about it a lot, and that is how to experiment. So the 5th principle is experiment. And you know, when we've been through something difficult, it feels like the stakes are really high. We've tried so many things and maybe we've been pushed back, maybe we've been abused or hurt, whatever it might be. And so it can feel like if this next thing doesn't go well, then I'm gonna fall apart and everything's messed up, right? It can feel very like black and white thinking. But if we decide to have this experimenter's mindset, and what I mean by that is you test, you adapt, you learn from it, right? Then we have a different approach to trying new things. There is no failure, it's just information, it's data. And so I experimented by volunteering, like I've spoken to you about. I experimented by studying different courses and learning things, but also by going to a recovery group was a massive experiment. Eventually getting divorced, huge experiment, right? Like, what am I capable of? Who am I really? Who do I want to be? And so if you have this experimenter's mindset, you don't have to do the big, massive experiment straight away. You can do the small ones, and that allows you to iterate and adapt and learn from it. And it can be useful to journal or talk to someone and just kind of get feedback loops in different ways in order to understand what the experiment is doing for you. How do I feel about it? What is it teaching me? And then move consciously and with intention through there. Now, this isn't a principle I'm mentioning, but it kind of helps with moving consciously and intentionally, and that is checking your, numbing mechanisms. And what I mean by that is, hey, for me it was drinking, but for you it might be gaming, it might be shopping, all the things that doom scrolling. There's so many ways that we can be numbing out and not actually focusing on the intention and how we do have time and energy to build the life we want. When we're distracted, we're numbing and avoiding. And when you first stop avoiding, you're often going to feel a lot of things. And the reason you're avoiding and numbing is to not feel, because maybe you've stacked so many things that you've suppressed and avoided over the years that it's really tough, and it can feel like a wave, and it can feel like overwhelm. You're gonna need to give yourself a little bit of space to feel, to grieve, to breathe, and that's gonna do this a little bit through this iteration of change, and that is okay. Don't worry too much about that. That's absolutely part of the experiment and the journey, is to create space to feel and to learn new coping strategies over the months, the years, and as time goes by, they'll be completely radically different. So number 6, my 6th principle is all about learning from feedback. So when you talk to other people, first of all, you might need to shift your circle of friends. People talk about this a lot, right? That the people that you hang around with might be reinforcing the story that you've created about your past. And you might need to mix up that group, join a different community group, just dial down and up. You don't have to be extremist and never see friends again, but you might just, reduce the volume or ask yourself, do I want to believe the things that they are saying? Are they echoing the story that I want to tell about my life? Or are they reinforcing the belief system about an older life? But feedback is essential to any kind of experiment. So learning from mentors, learning from people you respect. For me, it was, hey, other addicts, right? It was people on YouTube that I was learning from if they weren't in my circles. There were free mentoring platforms. There were employers, there were friends, there were people in my networks that I never took advantage of until I thought, what if I practice an experiment of being curious and asking for people's thoughts and advice? And of course, you're gonna have your trusted people, but what do you do with that advice? You don't have to believe or follow everything that everyone says, because if you did, you'd be overwhelmed, and it's actually more important to listen, hear what people are saying, but then create a practice of turning inwards and going, what does this mean to me? How does this fit with my intention for where I want to get to? And slowly you can build and get more discerning about which bits of advice are useful for your journey and which bits to turn down the noise and let go of. 2 more steps. Number 7 is super important, especially if you, like me, have been through some pretty intense stuff. And that is shorten the shame cycle. What a sentence. Shorten the shame cycle. And what I mean by that is many of us have, big shame feelings or experiences because of what's been done to us, or maybe our reactions to things that we're kind of ashamed of because we needed to do that to survive. And it's understandable. Shame shows up in our body, it shows up in how we shut down or how we numb or react, whatever those things might be. And it's not realistic, especially if you've been through a hell of a lot, to just go switch it off. Just don't feel shame. That's not realistic. You're going to feel it, and it's going to show up in your reactions because you're in a habit of doing it. You haven't recognized it. And now that you are, it might be everywhere. You might notice this shame cycle a lot more. So for me, what's really useful is to just shorten it. So back in the day when I first was trying to change my behavior, my thoughts, and my actions, my coping strategies, shame was big. It might take a week or even longer than that for a trigger or that shame response to be buzzing in my body, affecting me. And so I couldn't switch it off, but I could learn about it. I could notice it, and then I could slowly begin begin to use different mechanisms to nourish myself or nurture myself in order to give me what I needed to move through it. So notice what I said about moving through it, but also how your shame cycle can shorten. So it used to be like a month, then it was 3 weeks, then it was 4. I'm kind of exaggerating for effect, but over the years, it's like reduced in the amount of time. And now, hey, I might have a minute where I go, whew, that feels like shame. And I've got certain strategies to name it, to talk to someone, to do some meditation, whatever it is, to notice, recognize, give it space, give it a voice, and let it go. So whatever's going on for you, understand and begin to observe what that shame cycle means and looks like in your body, your thinking, and your reactions. And at first, you might not be able to do anything about it, but over time, you'll be able to shorten that cycle, and that is the work. And finally, principle number 8 is keep doing the work. Now, I know that sounds a little bit overwhelming, and for some of us, we can feel a bit resentful in a way and be like, oh, do I still have to do the work all the time? It's not fair. Other people don't have to do as much work. I have to always do the work. Trust me, I have felt this myself. But here's what I mean by the work. It isn't just sitting in the shame and doing the therapy and having a cry fest and all the tough stuff. That's part of it. But the other part of the work is actually practicing the feeling and experience of joy. Practicing feeling gratitude. These are great, expansive feelings, but they take practice because you're trying to wire new parts of your brain chemistry. You're trying to get new habits forming from the kind of shame, victim, kind of spiral of doom mindset that you've had in the past. So keep doing the work is practicing joy, practicing gratitude, but also practicing vulnerability and openness. And that can mean that the response is like intimacy and deep, meaningful connection. It's not just the, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to look after my trigger for 2 weeks now, right? So the adventure of it, treat it like an adventure, is keep doing the work is like, hey, I wake up and I get to do the work because it allows me to change my life. And of course, I'm talking with 15, 16, 17 years under my belt, looking back going, holy shit. You know, doing those tiny things that didn't feel like change over time have radically altered the trajectory of my life, my income, my relationships, my physical health, my mental health. So these are the things, there you have it, the 8 ways to build your life no matter what's in your past. Let me know if there's any more, if I've missed any, you know, what are the things that have helped you move your life forward? Let us know in the comments.